concerns us all, and our cars, and our homes, and our businesses, and everything we can think of. From the Punch newspaper, 165 naira per litre fuel. Depot owners shun federal government's directive, and marketers give conditions. So on Sunday, the oil marketers gave the federal government the conditions that have to be met in order for them to maintain the pump price of premium motor spirits at 165 naira per liter, which is a number that has been being contested left, right, and center. Now, according to them, the cost of the commodity must be sold at the approved ex-depot price at various depots, whether private or government owned, because they say right now the private depots are dispensing the PMS at higher rates than approved by the federal government, which makes a mockery of the current situation that they have and how much they have to sell it to the end user. Now, what do you say about this? Because of course we've seen the threats that has been put out, because they're saying, well, you see these queues, trust me, they're nothing compared to what will happen going forward. Your take on this?
Okay, sure. Thank you very much. Now, Lagosians, I'm sure that you've noticed since Saturday at the very earliest, fuel queues have returned and they're getting worse throughout the day.
Mm.
Now, we continue to import petrol for reasons only the government knows and understands, despite having four state owned refineries. Now,
Yes.
the approved ex depot price for petrol is 148 naira. That is the price at which it should be sold to filling stations, to marketers. Now, the question is, when was this price fixed? Isn't the price reviewed? Now, we understand that the federal government is determined to maintain the subsidy on petrol, given the fact that it's heading into an election and ruling party will want to win. But the truth of the matter is this: the economics of our circumstances today have already indicated a long time ago that this subsidy cannot continue to remain in place. Now, the landing cost of petrol right now, as of last week, was about 157, 159 naira. Now, if you insist that the approved ex depot price is 148, that 9 naira differential, which is a loss already, who's supposed to absorb that loss? The marketers are companies set up to make profits. They're not charity organizations. They're not federal government agencies that do not need to make a profit. Now, we understand that some private depots are selling at 162, 163 now. Now, the question is this: for a while now, at the very least, the NNPC has almost been the sole importer of these cargoes. We know that there are a number of other companies that bring in petrol, but not in the
Mm.
quantities the NNPC does. The depots need to explain why they need to increase the prices from 148 to 162, 163. That's a 14 naira, 15 naira jump. What informed that increase? How did you get to that number? What are the indices that were looked at to arrive at that number? But more importantly, they're now insisting that if you insist that petrol will remain a regulated product with a regulated price, then you have to compensate us. Remember that a few weeks ago, IPMAN, Independent Petrol Marketers Association
Mm-hmm.
Nigeria, made some complaints and money was made available to them. Now, these guys, the Depot and Marketers Association and the major All Marketers Association, are now saying you also need to compensate us if you insist that the price will remain at 165 now. Now, the bigger question is the amounts that will form these compensations. Where exactly is the money coming from?
Now, Mr. C, okay, here's the thing that we've been doing this dance for years at this point now. And at this point, between the devil and the deep blue sea, is there like a little rock that we can just perch on that's bang in the middle of the two? I've seen other countries in Africa who do fuel price reviews on a quarterly basis, on even a monthly basis, because they know, the government knows that situations and circumstances change. Is that not something we can do? What is stopping us from doing that? Why do we have one extremely rigid unchangeable price that people then that we now have to get to a situation where queues petrocalypses happen left, right, and center? Why can we not just have a regular review? What's stopping us?
Okay, what's stopping us appears to be that the system as it is now has been purposely and deliberately designed to operate that way. Now, when we're saying all these things, the NMPC has increased the vessel charter rate. So for vessels coming to Lagos, it's jumped from 27,000 naira to 38,000 naira. If you're going to states like Cross River State, it's 42,000. Now, yes, what you've spoken to should happen in an ideal situation where everything works properly and our public officials are acting in the best interest of the people they're serving. But in Nigeria, today's reality is they have an agenda that they're working with. They are the only ones who understand why this petrol subsidy must remain in place, even when it is crystal clear that the objectives for which it was first started have since been long defeated.
Okay, now we've got comments coming in. Tayo is saying, Mr. C keeps talking about subsidy removal as if Nigeria is a normal corruption free country where the money saved from subsidy removal will not be embezzled. He goes on to say, to ask actually, can you please tell us why you're so confident? And by us, Tayo means Tayo, that the money saved from subsidy removal will not disappear into thin air.
So I can't guarantee that the money will not disappear into thin air, but we're talking at least 6 trillion now, as of today, that has gone supposedly in the name of fuel subsidy. If we had to go into other areas of the economy, all of that money cannot disappear. ASU has been on.
Do you think so? We have a special brand of magic here. You
No,
don't
no,
think
no,
it can?
no, Shokman.
Okay.
I'm not saying none of it will disappear. All of it in one go in different areas cannot disappear. It's literally impossible. Well, because of this magic called fuel subsidy, which incidentally, when the president first came in 2015, he said he didn't believe in it. And 7 years later, we're still discussing it.
7 years later, the finance minister got a surprise when suddenly the subsidy removal that had been planned was unplanned.
So, to educate our listeners, if we have to remove the fuel subsidy today, we're probably looking at a price of petrol per liter somewhere between 480 and 550 or even 600 a liter. But that is the truth.
No, hence why I said between the devil and the deep blue sea, is there a rock?
Right now, I can't see any rock.
Can you see the rock, people? Can you see the rock? All right, let's get into our next story. Coming in from the Guardian newspaper, banditry Zamfara launches community protection guards. Now, Governor Matawale has come up with this idea or this action plan, which involves the training of newly recruited community protection guards who will be helping the conventional security agencies fight bandits or terrorists. So, speaking at the flag of the training in Gusau, he had said that okay, they came up with these additional measures and said that they had called on them, saying that yours is a patriotic call. Your names will stand out in history as people with remarkable patriotism, selflessness, and love for peace. Let's face it, things are bad in Zamfara. At this point, something has got to change, and this is the change that Governor Matwali has thought up. What do you think of his plan?
Thank you, Chopper. So, first of all, the very fact that he's had to set up this community guard initiative speaks to the failure of the state security agencies. Clearly, if they were doing such a wonderful job,
We wouldn't need that.
effective job, we'll need them. Now, you've gotten these guys in each of the 19 emirates that constitute Zamfara State. Now, the first question is, will they be armed? Because you're dealing with terrorists who are well armed and have that innate desire to kill. So they kill first, whoever survives is then taken in, is then abducted. Now, after training them, how do you get the synergy between them and the existing state security agencies? When they capture terrorists or they're engaged in fights with terrorists, what are the rules of engagement? Do you try to capture anyone alive? And when you do capture them alive, what do you do with them? Do you hand them over to state security agencies? Two, it's one thing to set up this guard initiative. How about intelligence gathering? How about placing people undercover within these groups to get information, to get intelligence, and at the earliest possible opportunity, neutralize them? How
Then
about
at what point do we need any of the conventional security agencies? So here's the thing: you've asked many very pertinent questions, right? Such as, okay, will they be armed? Let's face it, considering the fact that the governor had already called for the citizens of the states to defend themselves and arm themselves, I can only assume, and by the way, this is an assumption. Sometimes assumptions can make a fool out of you and me, but that they will be armed. But when it comes to issues of intelligence gathering, I don't know, Mrs. C, is that something that you would expect of this body, of this group?
they should be able to get their own intelligence because let's not forget they're natives of the area. So it's not like they're foreigners who were brought in. And
Mm.
then remember when the governor called for everyone to get arms, there was a pushback from not just the police, but also the army. The chief of defense staff said he did not agree with the governor's stand. And it's fine to say you do not agree, but people are dying every day in Zamfara. People are being abducted every day in Zamfara. People are paying ransoms every day in Zamfara. So you sit down in Abuja and say you don't agree. That's fantastic. What alternative, what other option have you provided? If your boys were doing the work they were given to do and they were doing it properly and effectively, then there'll be no debate as to whether private citizens should get guns.
Now, actually, you know what? I walk back my last question to you in terms of intelligence gathering, because I have what we have seen in other parts of the country is these same groups that are not a part of the um, uh, conventional security network actually do have seem to have a better rate of intelligence gathering, in that they have more trust built with the people, the indigents. So that could,
It,
that's actually a very interesting point.
it will work because it's been tried and tested everywhere in the world. To defeat an enemy, you must have information or intelligence about what the enemy is planning. You don't always wait for the enemy to attack you. You have to get information so you can be proactive. Now, even Israel does the same thing. You need to get informants on the inside who will give you real time information as to what they're doing. To apply technology, we have drones for the love of everything good. Get drones that can read and detect body heat signatures, no matter how thick the foliage in the forest are. They can pick up body heat signatures, they can tell whether they're armed, and then you then know what to do. But we mustn't also rule out the fact that in liaising with the security agencies, we've also seen that some members of the security agencies are actually traitors and working for these terrorists. So that is something that also needs to be looked at and carefully considered.
All right, now we've got your messages coming in before we take our next story. Boston, who's in traffic right now, sorry, Boston, says the base cost of PMS is not the only driver to the pump price. There are other costs. Vessel costs, which is $38,000 to $55,000 from the normal 18 to 21,000 per day rate. The finance cost, storage, running costs of the terminal, which is also based on diesel price, truck transportation, and retail station costs and margin. So a lot of costs involved. Thank you, Boston. Basu says reality is that the 165 naira is unrealistic despite the subsidy on the base cost. The only way the current rate can be maintained is if the government is willing to subsidize the entire downline cost of PMS. Whilst this message in from Wale says the real threat to our collective good is how we accommodate a government that, after people have been kidnapped and killed on a weekly basis. So while he's saying that the real threat is ourselves because we're being lethargic. And Alozie says, Obasanjo tried to sell Port Harcourt's refinery to private hands. We resisted. He tried to remove subsidy. We resisted. Jonathan tried to remove subsidy. We shut down the economy. It has been known for decades that fuel subsidies would harm us and corruption would exacerbate it. We may now be at the point where even if we don't want to remove it, then we will default. It's going to be tough, but we must do it. Oh, wow. Alozie then goes, it will kill us. All right, Alozie, so we must do it, but it will kill us. Wait, okay, no, if we don't do it, it will kill us, is what I think you're trying to say before you give me a heart attack. And more messages in now. Niracello from Ogudu says this move by Zamfara state government is a good one because the federal government at this point can't protect its citizens. However, this could create room for anarchy because people will not have much fear and respect for this group, especially if they are not armed. And Balan says, do you honestly think this economy or country can survive with PMS at 500 naira per liter? And also says, but why do the independent markets insist on buying or lifting from private depots when the NNPC is selling at a price that can still make good margins? Oh, and your messages keep on coming in. Oh, yes, Lennon, thank you for that. Alozie says, I meant it would kill us if we don't stop it. Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. All right, let's move on now. We've got more. This one in from the punch. Okay, so let's hear from Benue State Governor Samuel Orton because, I think by his rationale, the Land Use Act is under attack and he's saying it's evil, evil, evil. Let's talk about it. Water Resources Bill. We won't allow federal government to take over Benue land. That's what the Benue State Governor Samuel Orton has described. He's describing as evil the reintroduction of Water Resources Bill at the National Assembly, which last Wednesday was reintroduced by the House of Representatives by the chairman of the House Committee on Water Resources, Sada Soli. Okay, Mr. C, let's discuss this because just go ahead with your thoughts.
Okay, thank you, Shopper. So, in the last assembly, which was the eighth assembly, a water resources bill was proposed, was introduced to the House. Now, part of that bill, if I recall correctly, was the federal government planned to take land in each of the 36 states, ostensibly for water resources purposes. However, as we will recall, then the activities of Fulani, of people believed by the indigents to be Fulani headsmen and doubted by the federal government. So the people then believed that it was a ploy to give land to Fulani headsmen. The government denied that and claimed it was for water resources and that they had the right to take it. But that bill did not pass because objections were raised due to the existence of the Land Use Act, which clearly states that all land in each state is vested in the governor of that state on behalf of the citizens of that state. So the position of the opponent was simple. If you want land, ask for it, explain why you need it, and we will consider the request. You cannot demand for land. The law doesn't support that. Good. Now, to amend the Land Use Act, because it's been inserted into the Constitution, you will go about it the same way you would amend the Constitution. That means you have to have a two-thirds majority in each of the houses of the National Assembly, then two-thirds of the houses of assembly in each of the states also have to agree. So that means you must get 24 state houses of assembly agreeing to amend.
Has that been done?
Clearly, it has not.
So
it's really interesting and puzzling why this bill has been reintroduced. What it's designed to achieve remains to be seen, and why it cannot be achieved given the existing framework is yet to be seen. Now, if you want land for water, land can be leased. You don't need to own the land legally. When you insist on owning the land legally, it then raises questions as to what are your true motives. Because it seems something sinister is brewing. If all you need is land for water to site a water project, the state government can provide land, but it will still be owned by the state. So an insistence on legal ownership, the legal title being transferred to you, raises a lot of red flags that need to be answered.
Right. Okay. Quite an interesting one, I have to say. We'll see how this continues to play out and give you the updates here as time goes on. All right, Guardian News paper has this one: profile revenue generation, a major fiscal constraint for federal government, says the Debt Management Office. Okay, so this is not news, but all right, let's keep going. Now, Patience Oniha, who's the Director General of the DMO, said that the most viable solution to the country's challenge remained to grow revenues and plug all leakages, as cutting expenditure was not a viable option. Now, I have to say that's a really, really interesting approach to this. So, Mrs. C, what would you respond? What was your response to that particular statement?
Okay, so congratulations to Mrs. Oniha. Her tenure, she was reappointed to a second term as DG of the Debt Management Office. But that statement, I don't understand it. Because in one
Okay.
breath, you talk about plugging leakages. Then you turn around, same sentence, to say you're not going to cut expenditure. How do you plug leaks without cutting expenditure?
Questions?
Now, she has clearly identified that revenue generation is a problem. There is massive crude oil that's going on every day in Nigeria. I have a friend who works for an oil company, and he says their production for December between the field and the terminal,
Mhm.
all of it, not some, not most, all of it disappeared.
Oh, oh wait, huh?
All of it,
How?
all. They're still trying to figure it, but all of it
N-
disappeared. Now, crude oil is not something that can be stolen by your average layman. Imagine your
Well,
product.
ships have disappeared, so I
So you need technical expertise. You need huge funding. Imagine your whole production disappearing.
I actually cannot imagine it.
Well, this is Nigeria. It happened. We had another oil company. The chairman of that company, who is very connected, very influential, top guy, said in a particular month, 70% of their production disappeared. Now, each day this happens. We're not even meeting the daily targets assigned to us by OPEC. And everybody is just keeping quiet. Now they want to improve the tax collection network, bring more people into the tax brackets so they can collect more taxes because they've realized that for now there appears not to be political will to confront frontally the massive oil theft going on in Nigeria's oil industry. So focus on non-oil tax, non-oil segment of the economy and bring in taxes. But again, we've seen that there's certain expenditures made at the executive level, both states and federal, that need not be made. Some of the aids have to go. You can't have the same retinue of aids you had in 2015 and 2022. Private companies have since downsized to reflect the true realities on the ground. Why isn't the government prepared to do that? Why isn't cutting expenditures a priority? Why isn't it an option?
Yes, I was about to say it's not even a priority. It's apparently not an option. And how exactly does it not come across as a viable option? Because we've seen where expenditure can be cut. In fact, without any what's the word, any impact on productivity or performance. So I have to say that particular statement was a very eye-opening one. All right, let's take a look at your messages before we get to our next story. So Jim says no money will be, first of all, he sent in a earlier message saying no money will be saved from removing subsidy, we will just borrow less. And also says leakages are criminal diversions from the official expenditure. You can plug leaks without cutting expenditure. However, I believe we need to cut official expenditure. And Abayomi says hello again. All theft by who? Same executives. They sell in the black market and blame it on the federal government because it's a joint venture agreement. Federal government will pay part of their OPEX regardless, says Abayami. And Kabuli says, the entire production can't just vanish. Maybe a pressure drop, yes, but not all. Now, when faced with what they might need to trace the lines where the branch offs are, and arrest as many as possible. But basically, you guys, with me in this camp of we can't believe it. Not that we don't, we just can't. It's physically impossible for our brains to wrap their heads around what's going on there. Now, B from Lucky says, oh, B, wrong, wrong, wrong one. Okay, Mr. C says, oh, not Mr. C, who's this? Tajuddin says, Mr. C, please sell your services to these inefficient people in government and or come and be the president come 2027. Are you ready for that fight? And more. Who do we have? Okay, Tokoni Douglas says when you plug leaks in Nigeria, expenditure will go down. Whilst Idima Puza from Surulere says the only answer to scarcity of fuel is to build more refineries. Fix the ones we have first. No, no. Okay, well, build more refineries is what Idima Puza says. Besides putting the existing ones in use. Ah, gotcha. Both fuel subsidy and scarcity would then become history, and it will also solve the unemployment palaver in the country. Hmm. Okay. And real quick, Jerry says the debt manager did the debt manager say cutting expenditure to save is not an option? Can it be different if it is the case of an individual? These are the round pegs in square holes that are causing the problems in Nigeria. All right, Mrs. C, let's take a look at this one from the Premium Times. Why Peter Obi should accept to be my running mate. So Rabiu Kwankwaso, the presidential candidate of the New Nigeria People's Party, the NNPC, on Sunday advised former governor of Anambra State and presidential hopeful Peter Obi to accept an offer of being his running mate for the forthcoming presidential election because he was saying, well, there have been talks between our parties. Let's see what we can do. However, the sticking point is who exactly will be on the ticket to become to run for presidency. And he says, well, he's made a case. Kwankwaso has made a case saying that, well, if he had to step down and be the vice presidential candidate, then the whole party would disintegrate. So, your thoughts?
Okay, thank you, Shokman. I'll start from your last statement. It speaks volumes to the structures and the type of party he's built. That if he were to make the pragmatic choice, the entire party would disintegrate. Now, the question needs to be asked. Rabiu Kwakwanso, what exactly are your chances of becoming president next year in the scale of things? It's a question that needs to be answered. I'm sure if a poll were conducted amongst Nigerians today, across the various age groups, and they were asked to write down the names of the top 3 candidates after the elections next year, I'm sure some of them won't list Rabiu Kwakwanso in any of the positions from first to third. Now, the New Nigeria People's Party appears to be very strong in Kano and probably Kaduna, possibly. In the south, in the southeast, in the southwest, does that party exist? On social media, even though social media is not a true reflection of our reality.
Not by any way, shape,
yeah, but even on social media, the New Nigeria People's Party, does it even register? Is anyone talking about it? Now, Peter Obi may not win the election, possibly, because we're not in the business of fortune telling or predictions, or giving predictions. But he appears to have some people who believe in him, who understand what he's about and what he's proposing to do. So, in the true sense of things, if anyone were to step down for the other, it should be Rabiu Kwakwanso stepping down for Peter Obi. Simply because I've listed 3 regions in Nigeria where I cannot find the footprint of the New Nigeria People's Party. And I stand to be corrected. Now, in the North Central, the New Nigeria People's Party, will they win an election? Only time will tell.
Well, speaking of time, we've come to the end of ours here on Freshly Pressed, but don't you worry, you can keep on having this conversation and many more with Mr. C. He is at Monsieur C on social media. If you are, by the way, the C is with a triple E. We've already tweeted about him and tagged him in our post on at Smooth981FM, so you can go through our feed and find him and find our other analysts here on Freshly Pressed as well. Mr. C, as usual, it's been a pleasure, and you've asked some very insightful questions that we can only hope that we get some answers to. And I look forward to having you on Freshly Pressed once more. All right, that is that. Coming up, it's going to be all about sports inside the locker room, and that is at quarter past 8.
The headlines, the stories,
All right, people. Thank you.
In-depth analysis of national current affairs.